Hello and welcome to this week's soundtrack of your life. A little bit later than usual this week, but hey, it's all good. These things happen. So my guest this week's show is Danielle Wilson. So Danielle is a growth alchemist who helps small businesses earn more money, in her words. And she was a natural guest to be on the show after I checked out some of her content, and she was having conversations and posts about music in her life. You know, whether that's bands and songs, and really getting into long conversations and sharing a lot to do with music. So I thought, let me just ask her to see if she wants to be on the show. And I found that she was more than willing to do so. And that led to us having this great hour of chat that you're about to watch or listen. Again, all wide ranging. And it does get a bit emotional at a couple of points, but that's what this show's about. This is just about the stage for you to share your stories about music in your life and how it's interacted and interlinked with your people, scenarios, moments, eras, because I believe we've all got stories to tell when it comes to that regard. So this is the show to do it on. And if you want to be on the show, just check out the sign up link that's somewhere on this post or video or podcast platform that you're watching this on, and we can get you set up to be on the show. So without further ado, here's the show with Danielle. Enjoy and feel supersonic. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. You might be wondering, where have you been for the past couple of days? Delays happen, but here we are, better late than never. If you're new to the show, welcome aboard. This is the show where we literally go through the music in your life. So that's bands, albums, songs, soundtracks, theme tunes, whatever you want, and how they've formed links with your life. So whether that's stories, people, events, scenarios, moments, whatever that might be, this is the show for you to share your stories about that and inspire people with new music and entertain them with your stories. And my guest on this week's show is Danielle Wilson. Very excited to have her on board, as she is someone who, through her content, if you check it out on social media, shows a lot of expertise in her, helping coaches business. There's a lot of value in there, but equally she shares so much about music and was literally a natural fit to be on the show. And it only took a couple of questions and posts to get her on the show and share her stories with us. So Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Vishad. It's so wonderful to be here.
Very excited to have you on. And as I say, that having seen some of the content already about music, she doesn't just explore, say, a song. She goes into like the detail and taste and stuff like that. So literally, Danielle, the mic is yours to begin where you'd like us to.
Oh my, okay. Oh, where do you begin? Well, I'll start by saying that I'm Danielle Wilson, and my brand is The Growth Alchemist. And that's because I work with small businesses to show them how to make more money, how to make more sales and more profit by creating a client-centered approach. And I think it's really interesting, Vishad, that my foundation for my work is emotional intelligence.
Oh, nice.
And I understand that that's a huge part of what you do as well. So I thought that was a really unique kind of tie-in that we've got. But gosh, on the music front, I have been a music, I don't want to say aficionado, because that implies that I actually know something about music, and I don't really. I have an enormous appreciation for music across all genres. There isn't, if you were to say to me, well, what's the one genre that just speaks to your soul? I would have to say to you, it's all of them. There will be artists and or songs in every genre you can imagine that just, I don't even know how to describe. I've always said that music is my soul speaking.
Right.
I feel such a deep connection to it, and I always have. And I don't even know what to say there, but there's just so much, everything literally from Tchaikovsky through to Bizet, through to all the stuff from the 20s and 30s and big band, and up through the rock. of the 50s and Elvis and the Big Bopper and all of those, and then right on through the 60s, especially psychedelic rock, and then the classic rock in the 70s. Oh my gosh, 70s rock. Maybe that is my favorite. Um, but I was born in 1969, about a month and a half after we landed on the moon.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, and so there's this long history of music changes that my generation has experienced. A lot of innovation in music, even including instrumentation, and
Mm,
experiments with sound, right? Like there's some really wonderful, amazing artists out there who were really open and willing to experiment. I think of people like Trent Reznor, Prince. Like I even, and those guys are from like late 80s, 90s, maybe Prince is the 80s. But then even to Nirvana, or go back to Journey, or go back even farther to Led Zeppelin. How about
mm.
Pink Floyd? Like all of these are favorite bands of mine or favorite artists of mine. And so there's a real versatility. No, not versatility. Uh, Range. I don't know what else to. There's a lot of differences in them. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with music. It's the foundation of my life. Speaking back to emotional intelligence, go ahead.
I was to say it's a really nice answer to say that. Yeah, sometimes you do come across people that, when you say, what kind of music are you into, as a general question, and they're like, oh, I like everything. And I'm not meaning to say they're disingenuous, but it's like, well, I usually find they say, oh, I like everything, but I don't like metal, I don't like heavy rock. Like, okay. And as someone who's appreciative of those genres, I'm like, okay, so it's not really everything then. But it's like, it's nice that you can say that, having come, from a multitude of eras with innovations in sound, bands, people, movement, that kind of thing, that you can have an appreciation for all musical styles. And so the content you post, there is that genuine enthusiasm when you talk about a song or a band. Like, I've seen on your content that you talk about, name that song or what this song means to you,
Yeah.
and then that triggers somebody else to chip in with their viewpoint.
Yes.
And the first, I think I remember the first time I thought that you'd be an ideal person for the show is Brian Campbell, so guy who was a guest on the show
Okay.
previously. He started a very simple question: 80s or 90s music, and that
I
was it.
remember that.
And I can see you two were batting back and forth about the taste and bands and songs you're into. And as somebody that has an appreciation of both, but probably sways towards the 90s side, I chipped in too. But then I could see that, like, okay, you guys are having this real back and forth with each other, and I thought, okay, do you know what? Got to get you on the show.
Oh, well, that's kind of cool. That I like that connection. That's really neat. It's amazing. It's almost like those 6 degrees of separation, right?
Yeah,
We are all only separated by 6 degrees and or six other people, and that's very cool. I like that.
cool.
I
So
like
would
that.
you?
I think Brian's another one that's into a lot of different
Yeah.
types of music, isn't he? Yeah,
Oh,
I
very much
thought
so.
so.
Like when he came on the show, I guess he'd already just planned his time on the show out. Like, he took us through a real journey
Oh,
of where he,
wow.
like, he talked about, picking up a lot of his tastes from his dad's 5,000 strong vinyl collection, literally sifting through, all the vinyls that he had, and then finding his love for Black Sabbath on, I think,
Mm.
one of the last, if not last, vinyl that he picked up, because he only knew the one side, and then he discovered
Okay.
the whole album. He's like, oh crap, there's another side here. And then that was the gateway for him to go into all of his sort of bands and tastes and stuff like that. So he had loads of stories to tell, and like yourself, he's very eloquent in sharing and stuff like that. So again, he was a natural fit, and definitely looking to get him back on and stuff like that. So
Good.
I wanted to ask you, like, do you remember the first song or band you had that kind of um, connection to, whether that's emotional or spoke to you or anything like that?
I think that if I were to go back in my own memories, I mean, really seriously, I've been listening to music since I was born and singing since I was one or two.
Nice.
Um, Yeah. I would have to say that my very first real connection to music was in 1978, and I I came. I was an only child, and then
Right.
my mom and my dad, my stepdad, but I just call him dad. My mom got pregnant, and so there was this unexpected joy coming our way, and my dad had two boys from a previous marriage, and then my mom just had me, and then my little sister was coming along, and it was the 70s. So, you just automatically did what was right. You did the right thing, and we all moved in together as a big family. And my mom had decided that she felt that we were watching too much television. So I got my love of Star Trek from my dad.
Okay.
And we would all gather around the TV because we really had nothing in common. We really felt quite thrown together.
Hmm.
And so we were looking for something to connect us. And I can still remember being in that house, and there was always music playing. And my brother, ironically, my brother Daniel was a massive Kiss fan. And I know that you and Brian talked about Kiss, but he was a massive Kiss fan. And my dad had one of those amazing 1970s stereos with massive speakers and the
Oh,
turntable
nice.
and the hi-fi and the equalizer and all the components, right? Like a component stereo. And my brother used to put on, oh my gosh, I don't remember the name of the actual album, but there's one song on it called 100,000 Miles or something like that. It's Peter Criss doing basically a drum solo for 10 minutes.
Whoa.
That's my earliest memory of having music that really made an impression on me. And I think it was because it was really about this whole family thing, about us all coming together. And that was just the beginning of, they lived with us for like the next 4 or 5 years. And that was really the beginning of a whole childhood filled with musical memories. Because my mom decided that we were watching too much TV at that time.
Hmm.
And so when we moved about a year later, she sneakily took the picture tube out of the television and went, "Oh, gee, I guess the TV got broken in the move." So when we moved to the next house, we had no television. So we were forced to find other ways to amuse ourselves. And of course, that was easy for me. I love to read. So reading was easy, going outside and playing. I'm a Gen Xer. We literally left the house first thing in the morning, didn't come home until the lights came on. But there's always going to be rainy days. There's always going to be days when you're grounded, especially when you're a rebel like me. And so, so my brothers and I, so my brother Daniel is 1 year older than me, and my brother Daryl is 3 years older than me. And my dad had an enormous vinyl collection. So I was too young to
Nice.
have my own at that time. And my dad was very much into what we would now call classic rock. And
Right.
I have so many memories from that time of things like laying down on the floor, turning the speakers into my head, putting on the Boston album, Boston one, and blaring it at the top of the speaker's capacity and laying in the middle and singing at the top of my lungs. And you know what I remember the most? I remember that I never once got in trouble for doing that. I got in trouble all the time as a kid,
I was
all
gonna
the time,
say, like, if you've
every day.
switched it up to, like, 11, like Spinal Tap, and you're in the middle, like, isn't
Oh
someone
yeah.
gonna? Gee, and someone
Oh, by the
didn't.
way,
No,
should
no
I?
one ever picked you on that.
No, and you know what's really funny is I'm actually a retired hearing specialist, so I actually
Brilliant.
so the whole turning the speakers in and having that music at high volume, like deafening volume, is quite ironic. That I would then turn around and go into that profession a little bit later in life. But all of the albums, that was my favorite way to experience music. And it wasn't just because of sound, it wasn't the loudness of the sound, it was the vibration in my body.
Oh wow. Okay.
There was something about, there was something, I want to call it spiritual. I started exploring religions of a variety of origins when I was about 8 as well. And so um, there was something almost spiritual about it. It was very uplifting, and it was the vibration in my body that I could feel that felt so good, and the way it would feel in my throat when I would sing. And it was literally about the frequencies and the vibration more than it was about, oh, look, there's loud music playing. And I think that's why it doesn't matter to me what genre it is. Does that bring forward those kinds of physical responses? That's what I love about music, is the way that I can physically connect to it. We were too poor for me to learn to play an instrument, though I always wanted to learn to play piano. So that was my only way, was by laying on the floor between those speakers and creating that connection, because it really helped me to create my own instrument, which was my voice was my instrument. I used to be, about 8 years ago, unfortunately, I had a mishap, so my voice is nowhere near as good as it was. But I used to have quite a tremendous. It's awful to say this because it sounds so unhumble, but I used to have quite
not at all. If you did you ever record anything?
No, I was too shy for that.
Oh, pity.
Way too shy for that. Look, I'm like, even now, I'm like, twisting in my chair.
I don't know, Mars. Maybe
if you being not shy.
Well, I don't know. Like, if you ever thought you could do something like that. I mean, the possibilities nowadays are so there for you. Like, you don't need to go to a physical studio. You can do it out of the comfort of your own home and stuff like that. So I was just in that speaker's example. So was it something? I know you mentioned it was like the vibrations that it gave you, as opposed to the volume of it. Was it? Do you think there was any aspect of the music specifically? Was it like the a certain instrument or lyrics or harmony or anything like that particularly caught your ear?
Yes.
There we go.
All of that.
Okay. All right. No. Okay. Cool.
All of that. So it's interesting that you say that. I think that I would go through phases where, I know music instrumentally, I know music lyrically. Give me one song, my late husband used to tease that I would play mouth guitar, so that I would actually be singing along with the riffs, making the exact noises, hitting all the notes of the guitar. Or the boom, boom, boom of the bass, or tapping along on something to get the drums going, or all of the little mini riffs that the vocalists do throughout, all the little things that they do. And I could do it all. One of the things that we did when he was still alive, there was about 2 or 3 years there, just after Rock Band, the video game came out.
All right, yeah.
My husband and my children and I, for 3 years straight, every single day, that's what we did.
Nice.
Every night, wow. That's what we did. Is we played Rock Band, and we put the kids to bed. My daughter was only about 6 at the time. Put the kids to bed, and my daughter would look at me with the sweetest little face and say, "Mommy, are you gonna sing tonight?" And I would say, "Absolutely, I am, honey." And I'd go back downstairs, and that's what they fell asleep to, was really loud music. And Mommy singing. Wow.
I mean, they're going to have some stories to say when they grow older.
They sure will. Well, they are all grown up now. My son is now 22 and my daughter is 19. My son is 23, actually. So they do now. And it was interesting that those years came up just the other day with my son. And I said, "Do you remember those days?" And he just got so sentimental. And you have to know him to know that that's weird. And he goes, "I do." I said, "Those were some good years, weren't they?" He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Oh, sorry." And he said, "They were the best."
I think that's the power of that's the power of music and the shared experience it can bring. Like, no doubt, you've got many stories to tell. That so will they, because having been brought up in such a welcoming environment, a free environment, and the capacity to share. It's common that I think that all the people that I've had on so far, everybody started out young. No one's caught on to this as like, in very late years. And I reflect the same.
I was 40 when I discovered music.
Well, it's funny you say that, because if I reflect on my own journey, if you will, and to be
Yeah,
honest, I might just make an episode with me as the guest, but we'll see.
you should
Yeah,
have one of us interview you.
yeah. Well, maybe. No, the reason I reflect on it is like when I discovered the music that I'm primarily into. So again, classic rock guitar band music.
Okay.
I did pick that up fairly late. I'd say when I was 15, 16. So really in those core teenage formative years where you're trying to find your own, I guess, way in the world, that kind of thing in all manners. And up till then, it was like, I guess, I didn't really have a real connection to music. I knew of music. I knew, I'm in a household where, it's predominantly Bollywood, coming from an Indian background. But it was classic sort of like the 50s, 60s stuff, and a little bit of the 70s as well, that I grew up in predominantly. And in terms of like Western music, it was just what was in the charts, nothing too solid. But it was only until those teenage years that I started to hone in on guitar band stuff. But with the people I've had on, it's like they started off way younger. And so it was my parents. It was my you had a big massive vinyl collection to tap into. You had the speakers and the systems all there set up, and it's just fascinating to hear these stories about people start young and it still resonates with them today. I've always seen that people say that, oh yeah, you can change and tastes change over time, but when I've explored that concept on this show, people have harked back to, this is the song that my dad got me into. This is the song that I knocked around my friends with. This song reminds me of my friend who I met years ago. And those connections are strong and stay formed for ages. So your kids are going to have some real strong connections, as do you.
Yes.
I think it's just a really, really nice thing to have.
Yeah. I think it was probably one of the best gifts I could have given them.
Yeah.
They both took their passion for music and continue to explore that. I was fortunate enough to be able to give them an opportunity to learn to play instruments.
Okay, nice.
I was fortunate that when I expressed to my current husband that I've always wanted to learn to play piano, and that I had this goal that I was going to learn how to play piano before I turned 50. On my 49th birthday, he went and bought me a piano.
Oh, how
and got me
amazing.
lessons.
Fantastic.
So I did learn to play. Yay! I did learn to play before I turned 50. The biggest challenge at 50, I'll tell you, is to get your fingers to do what your brain is telling them to do. And then to coordinate looking at the sheet music in front of you and making these what that says. It's like this
in time and in the vision that you see yourself doing. Yeah, and it's like, you start off going, okay, quick, and after maybe 2-3 lessons, like, why aren't I like, Jerry Lee Lewis or Beethoven or Elton John yet? Why can't I do all the fast things and the stuff in my head? It's like, you gotta, it's about the patience. It's much like with our work. It's our patience, it's compassion, it's making mistakes, it's perseverance, it's all that stuff.
Absolutely. The failing forward. I think the persistence was the biggest thing. And I think that was really my biggest lesson rather than the lesson of learning how to read sheet music, it was really about the lessons of compassion and persistence. I should be able to do this. I'm smart. I should be able to. Smart has nothing to do with it. No. Smart has nothing to do with it. And I think that's a really difficult idea to accept, that with that, but also a beautiful idea. Music is not about intelligence.
No.
Music is about our human experience. And that's kind of a really cool, we can all share music. We can all be equally good at, with, around music. It's kind of like the thing that evens the playing field, and I think that's what's really amazing about it, and perhaps why I love it so much.
100%. I've always had the perspective of, when it comes to unifying people, I think music and sport are two huge arenas where you could be a stranger to somebody, wherever you're meeting them, and the two things you'll quickly bond over straight away are music and sport. And
Yes.
especially when it comes to music, because with sport there's always a risk, if you will, of a rivalry. Oh, I support team A, but you support team B, who are the rivals. Like, but with music, it's like, if you're into a band or genre, that's it. You've opened up a whole world of sharing possibilities. It's just, and it's a really unifying thing. And as I said, we've touched upon the connections you make with your own family, through being around them and all this kind of thing. But when you can expand that to strangers and be able to connect in that manner, it's really cool.
I absolutely agree. And it's interesting that you say about how it connects you with your family. I think that was one of the beautiful things about music as a young person. So there I was, 8 years old, new stepbrothers, little baby sister from being an only child, 2 older brothers, little sister, and now suddenly being thrust into the role of middle child. So from being the only to being the middle, it was a really weird thing, and not really understanding where I fit in. And honestly feeling as though I was kind of being shoved aside because, well, you've always been there, like my mom trying to make this effort to make the boys feel welcome, and yet they've got this baby. And so my brothers and I really had to find ways to connect to each other.
Yeah.
And music was a huge, huge foundation for that. Not only did my dad have all of that vinyl, but this was back in the days when kids still had really active imaginations and had to basically use the things that were around them rather than picking up some device that would show them all the graphics they need, right? So some of my fondest memories are around my brothers and I used to play rock band, only we used tennis rackets as guitars.
Yeah, man.
And,
who hasn't?
Right? Chopsticks on Tupperware and or pots and pans, those kinds of things. And stand there and pretend that we were playing. And then there was another thing. My oldest brother, he never wanted to be one of the contestants, but my oldest brother used to play Name That Tune with us. So that's where this comes from, the Name That Tune. But we would sit there, my other brother and I, and we were really, oh gosh, we were so competitive. We were so close in age. Plus we had almost the same name. Like he's Daniel, I'm Danielle. We're less than a year apart, and it was like we were fighting for, okay, we're both middle child, but I'm going to win. And so my oldest brother he all had loved 45, so he would get out his collection of 45s, and he'd turn his back on us all secret like this, and he'd flip through, and then he'd go over and he'd put the record on the player, and then he'd pick up the needle and he'd drop it on. And the contest was, who can blurt out the name of the song faster? Sometimes, though, Daryl would say it's not about the name of the song, it's about who can sing the first verse. So I will tell you right now, I know the opening verse for about 10,000 songs.
Oh, brilliant. We just need to find like a pub quiz somewhere that has that as a round and get you in, and we're guaranteed to win that. Yes.
Absolutely. I would absolutely win. I used to know all the words to just about every song I ever heard.
Oh, wow.
All of them get commented on that a lot. But now that I'm post 50, those memories got dumped into the pit of never to return.
Would you say you've got any memorable ones that spring to mind? Like, what's your favorite opening?
Oh, Carry On My Wayward Son. Absolutely. That was the song when my son was born. I used to sing that to him every night as his bedtime song. Yeah. I used to sing that to him every night as his bedtime song. There's something about their harmony and the power behind it. I know the words themselves are kind of like maybe not a great song to be singing to your 2-year-old son as you're tucking him into bed at night, but it wasn't about that. He didn't understand what the meaning behind the song was. He just loved that, it was about my son, and he knew he was my son. So for him, it was that. So I would say Carry On by Kansas. That's absolutely one of my favorite openings.
I bet he still remembers that. He might have even been 2 years old, but he probably still remembers that.
He absolutely does, because Rock Band had that song and he wanted us to sing it
Ah,
almost
there
every
you go.
night.
It's like, I know this song. It's like, yeah, I
Yeah,
know that.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
So, I wanted to explore as well, like, so I talk about this show as like connecting to um, stories, people, scenarios, and I'd also like to
Mhm.
extend that into emotions. Like many people
Right.
compile a playlist for, you know, a breakup or going out with your friends. So I'm interested to know, like, do you have certain songs that are linked to certain emotions for you, or indeed
Oh yeah,
albums, playlists? You know, if you'd like to share those.
absolutely. So I actually sent you a playlist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a link to that. It's a playlist that I think I started, I don't know, 7 years ago maybe,
Right.
when I first started using Spotify, and it's called Singing Feeds the Soul.
Mm.
And that playlist was originally all the songs that I would sing when I was feeling depressed or sad.
Okay.
And they're actually all pretty depressing and sad, and they all have a connection to somebody. Every song had a connection
Okay.
to somebody in my life, where when I was singing them, I could remember the sadness
Mm.
of that. And
Mm.
it was so cathartic because singing that allowed me, it was like it would let me get that emotion back out of my body again, so that I could return more to a space of neutrality. Um, Hurt by Christina Aguilera is by far one of my favorites on that list. There's another one by Rascal Flatts on there. Um, I can't remember the name of it, but both of those remind me of my father, biological father, not the stepdad that we were talking about earlier. So there's both of those. There's so many songs on there. I also have another playlist that's literally called Angry Music, and so
Oh,
that one
okay.
has a lot of that one has a lot of System of the Down. It's got Linkin Park. I almost said LinkedIn. It's got Linkin Park. Is it Three Doors Down or 3 Days Grace? I can't remember what else is on there, but there's a lot on there. It's got Papa Roach. Like it's all kinds of different, just the kind of music that you just that you do that. I have another one that's uplifting, all electronic dance music. Sandstorm being the most listened to one on there. Sandstorm by Darude, so instrumental.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I guess you mentioned that a lot of your songs are linked to people in that regard.
Yes.
Like, you know, you know, when you hear them, you know, it reminds you of the people. So I talk about, you know, how those links are formed via the process of anchoring. Yeah, anchoring
Mm-hmm.
from NLP, where, you know, the first time you hear it with the, you know, in relation to a person, that link is forged, or even an event or scenario, and then when it comes up again,
Mm-hmm.
you are reminded of that person. So in that regard, you mentioned people, but, you know, do you feel you've got any strong anchors to certain songs and events or scenarios or people? So typically, you know, I say in the promos to the show that it's like remembering your first dance or the first album you ever bought. So typically, I guess a lot of firsts. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you might have mentioned people. Are there any other similar anchors that are in your music space in that regard?
Uh, I don't know the name of the song, but when it comes on, it takes me back to grade 8, going on uh, our
Brilliant.
Quebec our Quebec trip. And
Right.
one of the events that we did was we went to a discotheque. So you're 13 years old and you're going off to this little French Canadian discotheque in Quebec City. And it was the coolest place because it had these phones in the table. You could call other phones, and we had such a blast playing with those phones. But it's this one song, and it is like an electronic dance song, but I imagine it's probably disco. It's
Oh,
very
nice.
disco. Um, it might even be Ring My Bell. It might be Ring My Bell, but it takes me back to that. So there's one example. Um, but no, honestly, I'm such a for being such a shy introvert, I really do a lot of connecting to people rather than places or events.
Right.
And even in that story I just gave you about the discotheque, the thing that I remember the most is Tracy. when I said to her, I don't know how to dance. And she said, dancing is so easy. Just get up and move your body. And
Yeah,
so
that's pretty
that's what
much
I
it.
did. So it's still, it's even then, it's tying back to the person of it. Um, I've been married twice, but I didn't have proper weddings. I eloped both times, so we didn't have a first song. So I don't have one of those kinds of things. I've been to, I think, 80 some odd concerts. So I'm sure a lot of
Oh
those
wow, okay.
songs will make you think back to the concert.
Do you have a
That might give
favorite
you a mental
concert
image.
that readily springs to mind in that regard?
Tool. Tool was by
Oh,
far one of
say.
the best. It was one of the best. Now, I will admit, my ears were ringing so badly after we left uh,
Were you
that I
like up
couldn't
front
hear
in the
for the
pit or
whole.
something?
No, no, I
Wow.
was not. I was up. I was basically in the nosebleeds, and it was just so intense that after we left, I think it was 24 hours before my husband or I could hear again
Whoa.
properly.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not sure how many people in the audience will know of Tool, but I don't know if you want to give
Oh,
a quick overview because people go like,
oh
"What?
gosh.
What's this? Who's they? Who are they?"
Uh, so Tool started in the 90s. I don't know a huge whole amount about them, but they did start in the 90s. They're very alternative kind of a band. What I love about Tool is their technical accuracy. This is a band where their musicality is absolutely brilliant. But the other thing I love about them is that Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer, he incorporates a lot of metaphor and a lot of
Mm.
visual ideas into his music that really help to bring the music to life. So very infrequently, there's one song called Vicarious where it's probably the only one where he's literally in your face telling you what it is he's saying. And all of the rest of them are kind of metaphorically describing what it is, the point that he's trying to make. But their technical accuracy is absolutely brilliant. And you know how when you go see live music, which I love live music, obviously over 80 concerts in my life, love live music. You know how when you go, it never sounds the same as it did on the recording?
No, no, it's a completely different experience.
Tool
If
is
you're not going to go to
identical.
see a band and expect the album that you hear at home on stage, no, it's different.
Don't do live music then, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go and see Tool, and then it will be identical. The
Wow.
only difference will be is that it will be bigger.
Mm.
The sound will envelop you because you can't possibly get a sound system that can make
Mm.
the intensity of noise that they've got. But
Well, I always
it
think that with
was
live music, you've got everybody else with you. Like you got
right. There's
a
this
big heaving audience.
feeling.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think that
You
adds
two
to
were
it.
great showmen. It does.
Ah,
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you two were great showmen. The Eagles were fantastic.
Oh, I want to
I
see
saw
them.
Boston before the lead singer died, so that was pretty cool. Journey, I
Wow.
unfortunately didn't get to see them with Steve Perry. I saw them with the guy that looks and sounds exactly like them or like him. Um, I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm not that into that kind of stuff. I'm into the music itself.
Fair enough. Is there anyone like left you that you'd like to see?
Oh no, I did actually get to see them. So I was supposed to see Aha, who were my favorite band in
Oh,
music
right,
live.
yeah, yeah.
I was supposed to see them, I guess it would have been 1987. And unfortunately, I had to have surgery on my back and
Oh,
wasn't
damn
able
it.
to go. And it's one of the only times I even know of them coming to Canada. So I don't know if they'll ever come back, but they are still performing together. And they are even still making music currently. It's
There
not
you
as
go.
good as it was in the 80s. It's different now.
But
They're older.
I think was it in the last show I was saying this? I think so with my guest that it's still quite eye opening how many of the classic bands from the 70s,
Mhm.
80s, 90s, 2000s are still going today pretty well. You know, they're not there as some kind of like novelty act or something. They're still there performing, holding their own in their, in the
Yeah.
I don't even think things like charts or Billboard like they're important anymore to them because they've been there, done that. But to
No.
still make new music, still be a little bit relevant, if you will.
Yeah.
But I guess if they don't come to Canada, you could always pop off to say America or even Europe to go see
I
them,
might
right?
just have to go to Norway to see them. Oh,
Yeah,
darn. There you go. There you go.
there you go.
Did
Yeah,
you
why
did
not?
you hear that the Beatles have just released a new song
Yeah, now and then,
using
absolutely.
AI? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That's amazing what's possible.
watching the behind the scenes thing they did, just to see the song and the story behind its generation. Like, it was just a very ragged old demo tape that Yoko Ono gave to Paul McCartney, and there was so much noise on it, just like old static and background noise and terrible stuff. And then for Peter Jackson to make a new software to delete all that stuff and then have this as if John Lennon's in the recording booth opposite. It's like, whoa.
Amazing.
And even then you could obviously George Harrison's not here anymore, so to bring his part in from mid-90s session when they tried to redo the song, it's like, wow, they just literally pulled everybody back in from all these places, and they've hit number one again. There we go.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And
Isn't that amazing?
I think somebody said it really well at the time that like it's quite incredible that like what was it, you're talking 40 plus years since the band were even together, and yet today you're hearing a new song from them, not something that's been dug up from. Well, there we go. It's not just something they found in an archive and here we go. It's like no, they've actually made the whole thing. And it's like, what? It's funny. So like, as a younger fan, 50 years on, you're hearing new Beatles music. So God knows what it was like when you've heard things for the first time in the 60s and 70s in their pomp. But nowadays, it's just brilliant.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's what a time to be alive.
Yeah. Well,
these kinds of things are possible.
You get the appreciation of both because. Many of the stars that are around today, like say the Rolling Stones, and in England we've had in the summer just gone like a reunion of major bands that were there from the mid-90s. So like the band Blur came back, did a new album and played at Wembley. That's exactly it. Yeah, song 2. Yeah. But they also released a new album. Pulp came back, did a mini tour.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody's waiting for Oasis, but probably not going to happen at the moment. But even then,
I don't see that happening.
No. But you actually see the remarks from each brother going, but at my gigs, there's still loads of people that are there to, they remember the band, but there's younger people there. These are people at their concerts like, you weren't even born when we made this stuff. You're talking like teenagers and 20-year-olds. You're like, hang on, I get the dads being there, the 30, 40-year-olds that were there when we were knocking about, but like, where have these youngsters come from? It's like, well, look, I think these classic bands and albums that stand the test of time are there for a reason. They do bring in the audience, because nowadays you may not see that same ilk. I think that those bands that capture the moment or the cultural significance at the time. I always see it as like this long running chain and litany going back to the 40s and 50s. You mentioned Elvis, the Big Bopper, and then the 60s. You had the Beatles, Stones. I mean, obviously I'm talking UK side. Then went to Queen, the Who, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath. Into the 90s with Nirvana, Oasis, Blur, then even like the Spice Girls, Take That, all these kind of things. The chain just keeps passing along and along.
Yeah,
and I guess you're still waiting for that. Who's picking the baton up next? But with all the stuff that's possible in terms of, as you say, instrumentation and AI. There's so many AI mashups on YouTube now. What would it be like? What would it be like John Lennon singing Bohemian Rhapsody? What's Freddie Mercury like singing Imagine? And you're like, well, okay, all these possibilities now. Some are more mangled than others for sure, but hey, look, you could have loads of experimentation with that.
It would be very cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, I actually you mentioned mashups there, and that's one of the things that I love looking for is mashups. There's one I think it's Marilyn Manson, Avril. Oh no, no, maybe that's an actual song. I think it started as a mashup though. It was Marilyn Manson, Avril Lavigne, and possibly Rihanna. Uh,
Right.
yeah, Rihanna.
That's a hell of a mashup.
Outstanding, right? And it was outstanding. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah. If
can
you
take a
can find it and
listen.
put it in the
It
playlist,
was
maybe you can share it with everybody else.
there you go. That's what I'll do. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God,
outstanding though. Yeah.
how would you even think of that? You'd never think to put those three together,
Who
would
has
you?
that mind that hears, like
Mad, isn't it?
my son, I think would be able to hear, oh, that's the same scale, same beat, same. He'd be able to do that kind of stuff. I don't know if he has the, soundboard technology, engineering technology to put them together, but I think he could pick out that song, and that song could go together.
You
Yeah,
should ask
it's
him. You should ask
crazy.
him like, what would you think? Like, you take all these bands and stuff, like, who would fit together, who wouldn't? That'd be an
There you go.
interesting
I should do
experiment.
that.
Yeah, yeah. You could create your own
Yeah, I
mashup
should
album.
do
There you
that.
go.
That's a great idea.
There
That's
you
a
go.
great idea. I just might do that. Yeah.
There you go.
And I think as well, you were saying about how this music transcends, and, how do you get to these? You weren't even born yet. I
Mm,
think there's got to be some portion of influence from parents, grandparents.
mm.
I know that, the reason I love music from the 20s, 30s, and 40s is my gram. I know that the reason I love 1960s folk and protest music is because of my Aunt Margaret. I know that I love 70s country and rockabilly because of my father, right? And 70s classic rock now because of my dad. But my mom was like pop music all the way from 1952 all the way till now. So I think that there's these influences as well. And when I think about when my children were born, and, my nieces and my nephews and my nephew's favorite band is AC/DC. My
Nice.
son loves Led Zeppelin, loves them, loves Rush. But he also loves King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Excuse me, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards. It's hard. It's a tongue
I was
twister
going
to
to say,
say.
like, you
Um,
probably can't say that after a few.
no, no. But he loves them because they've got such a similar psychedelic sound to 60s Zeppelin. So
Oh.
there's, yeah. So I think that there's definitely got to be some influence that comes from the generations that came before you, and what's their connection to music,
Mm.
and how are they introducing that to you, and how often is that going on in your world. And I think that there's got to be something to be said for that, because modern pop stations, they don't play that. How else would they have been introduced to it?
Well, it harks
Yeah.
back to what you were saying earlier of, like, you had the instance where TV wasn't there on purpose, and then that meant that
Mm.
you had to find your own ways of entertainment, which led you to naturally things like reading and music. And I
Mhm.
think in those early times when you have those early influences in that regard for you, that gives you that springboard when you have your real
Mhm.
formative years and you're actually self-aware. Because I guess with kids, like, you do things that are lent to, well, what is everybody else doing? What are they into? Oh, let me hop along with that, right? So,
Mhm.
if you're in a house with a big collection and you had some siblings that were enjoying it, you might be inclined to join in, especially if you had
Right.
no, like, TV or whatever. But when you grow as a teenager and you're forming your own opinion on things and your own choices and tastes and stuff, I think that what you've grown up with has a influence in that regard. Like, it's kind of like the little bit of a crossroads going, okay, are you still into that kind of thing, if you will, and are we
Mhm.
carrying this on, or does something new, completely new, come along and change this whole thing? I hark back to that 15, 16-year-old me saying I definitely went on a different journey in
Mm.
that regard for music, um, because the path that everybody else was treading did not appeal to me at all. Still doesn't. It was the whole hip hop R&B brigade. It's completely fine.
No thanks.
I did have an initial issue with it of, like, why doesn't anyone else seem to like what I like? That other side
Mm.
must be shit. Um, I found the proper answer. But as you grow old and you work on yourself and that kind of thing, it's like, it's not meant to be a right or wrong
Yeah.
answer thing. But come back to what you're saying. It's like, if you don't have those influences, then I guess when you come to your formative years and you start making the choices for yourself, you're like, well, what captures me at the moment? If you want to be into music, that kind of thing. And it's interesting that, like, again, it's something I've said on the show before, where like what's output there at the moment seems to come from a place of what act is making the most money for a record label. So they'll be put out because, oh, they're going to sell. And yeah, look, that's probably the same for the bands that we're into have come along. But nowadays it feels like, right, I'm out here as a band or artist because my record label thinks we're good enough and I'll sell shitloads. So really, it seems to more strike to like, okay, how are people going to remember me for, like, you know, controversy or, you know, it feels then like they exacerbate a story. Oh, you know, I wrote a whole album or song to get back at my ex or get back at this or do that. Oh, really? It's like your soap opera in public. Or, you like, and the one thing I come back to is like, if you go 10 years down the line, who's going to remember this shit? They may be good now. You may be selling a bucket load now because, let's be honest, you know, there's more platforms and possibilities. You know, even taking into account, you know, actually making money, say off of Spotify or YouTube or whatever, might be more harder. But you're exposing yourself straight away, content-wise, to loads more people, rather than like, oh, you know, I have to wait for the chart or, you know, see how my album sales go. But
or wait for them to play it on the radio.
Or wait for a radio play, exactly. You know, and that, you know, you dictated how up and down you went in that popularity stakes. But it seems nowadays, like, if you tune into like, okay, what kind of music can I get into? You're like, well, okay, you're going to listen to somebody going on about, you know, getting back at their ex or, you know, exaggerated body parts or whatever it is. Or, honestly, it's like, oh, I've got a big ass. Oh, brilliant. That's a hell of a song, isn't it? Or, you know, and it's like, well, you know, somehow you click into, okay, what did my parents listen? Because maybe those bands are back out there playing either new music, and that comes back to when we were growing up. Okay, you might have heard a song. Oh, okay, what else is on that album? Even things like an album is a bit alien right now. Even though albums are still being produced, people are like, okay, I'll make a playlist. Okay, that's all cool. But when, you know, when we were exploring music, it's like, okay, that's on this album. Okay, what else is on there? And what other albums do they make? What kind of bands are like this? And then you start that chain reaction.
Yes.
But nowadays you're like, wow, if you've not had that exposure or grounding, where do you go? Sorry, that was a bit of a rhetorical question. It wasn't been like, you know, Danielle, where do we go, you know?
I don't know the answer to that. I can only think that you go to YouTube and you listen to some mixed playlist, or you ask for recommendations, or you let Spotify pick because they've got those curated playlists for based on your mood, or you know,
and I guess that's
the only choice.
Well, that's the good thing, as you said, about the flexibility and the choice. So if we have the accessibility, we don't have to go and find a tape or find an album. You know, the physical copies, like, you know, at your fingertips is any device will find the whole album for you and the whole discography probably. So the access is there. It's about then, I guess, how much you tune in and then, you know, explore in that regard. So I wanted to ask you that do you have a particular, again, song, band, artist, whomever, that is anchored to your self-worth?
Oh. Wow.
And you can interpret your self-worth or whichever in whatever capacity you want.
That is a really hard question. That's like, I need like days to reflect on that one.
What do you have anything that springs to mind?
Has been such a fluid journey. Journey sprung to mind immediately. And probably because they've been there for a long time, but also because there was a period of time there where I was really struggling with my identity. being the only Wilson in a family full of Rowans, being the outcast because I'm the only one that's not his biological kid. Like there was a lot of identity stuff that I went through.
Mm.
Changed my last name quite a few times. Married young and divorced young. And I would have to say that Journey probably would be the one band. And which song? I don't know that there is one song. I think it's going to be, let's say it's their greatest hits. And the reason I say that is because that's probably the album. I have a tendency to literally wear out cassette tapes, wear out vinyl, like thank goodness for CDs and MP3s that you can't wear out from putting them on repeat.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm that girl. I'm the one that, yeah, I know you just played that song 500 times, but we're listening to it one more time because I'm still feeling it. But I think that one, oh gosh, you know what? Self-Worth? Kelly Rowlands, I think her name is, and it's called Feeling Me Right Now. That's the one.
Nice.
That one is tied to my self-worth. So see how you just got to ramble a little bit before you get there?
Absolutely.
And she is formerly from Destiny's Child. That's who she is, if anybody doesn't know exactly.
Okay.
She was with Destiny's Child, a band I never really appreciated. Can't stand Beyonce. Don't understand what that is. Really.
What's wrong with Beyonce? Why?
Oh, I don't know. I don't see what the hype is about. She's really not all that. She's not a great singer. She's a mediocre dancer. Like, what is the big deal? Myself, I just don't see it. But that's just me. This is the beautiful thing about music. We're each entitled to have our own opinion. There you go.
I love it. It's like I'm always up for a bit of controversy on this show. Is another thing at all. Like, well, it's like when you said that, you're like, actually, yeah, I can go with that. It's like, well, this may be a wider point. I know, to be honest, it's only just formed in my head, so okay. I kind of wing it as we go. But like, I get the whole messaging behind it, even though it might not be on purpose. Like, being, I'm not even aware of her discography a whole lot, so I probably might butcher it. So apologies to any Beyonce fans watching. But
that's okay.
Did she have songs like is it Miss Independent or Independent Woman or something like that, or single? Was it Single Girls?
All the Single Ladies.
That's the one.
And the one where she's like flashing some ring or
right.
something.
Yeah, you put a ring on it or something.
So materialistic.
Like that. Right. So like, okay, I guess you get the idea of like, okay, you're in your, I guess, feminine power and empowerment and okay, great, yeah, I get cool. But like, well, does it feel like, as you said, is that the whole thing that she plays on? And fair play to her for the success and all this kind. I'm not, knocking her in that regard. I'm not even saying the messaging is wrong, but it's like, that's, I guess, what I was saying before about, is it about like that messaging, that kind of, I guess, even branding that you're coming across, that you use music as that vehicle, as opposed to the classic bands that we're into who literally were there for the music. As twee as that might sound, I'm not trying to, do it in like an ABBA sense, thank you for the music. No. I mean, like, well, there's a reason why classic bands and albums stand tests of time. We picked up on a Beatles song that's been 50 years in the making since the band is gone. But now you come into, these artists and bands who, like, well, what's beyond this messaging?
Yeah. I do see a lot of the current music, and I'm going to say for the last, 20 years or so, being very formulaic, even more formulaic than I think the stuff from early rock and roll days, like the early, like, the Elvis 50s. I think it's far more formulaic now. I really despise auto-tune, and I challenge 99% of them to sing without auto-tune, and we wouldn't listen to it. And I think that's probably the meme that you probably kind of came into my world from, because it was a picture of Steve Perry, and it says, before there was auto-tune, there was talent. Like there's just very little in the way of genuine, you want to listen to them kind of musicality, as you're saying, being in it for the music. I think that now it's about being popular, being famous, having oodles of money, um,
Yeah.
being able to parlay that into some kind of other merchandise or brand where the money continues to come in. I think it's now about big business rather than about being about the music. That's my take on it. Yeah.
Well,
And I think there's a, I don't know if there's more ego now than there was then. I'm sure there was just as much ego then as there is now, but there sure does
it's
seem to
funny.
be a
It's
lot
like,
of ego now.
but on that point about egos, since then, it's like it almost feels like, well, they were kind of, they had the ego because of that success they had in terms of like, well, the success they have through their music. Like, okay, if you think of, who are we thinking of? Say Liam Gallagher or Johnny Rotten from Oasis and the Sex Pistols, right?
Yeah.
Both very forthright characters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think they're knobheads and dickheads. Fair enough. But at the same time, they're like, no, I'm lead singer of one of the best bands around. In, you know, even Johnny Rotten's case, we're like, you know, it was almost kind of a bit kind of a throwaway, like, you know, whether we succeed or not. But
Yeah.
are they the most technically perfect, gifted singers? Nope. Both are near impossible to imitate in terms of how they sing. People say, in all intents and purposes, they shouldn't be able to sing in terms of their physical mannerisms. You know, their stance when they sing, the vitriol that they, you know, express, especially with Johnny Rotten. Liam Gallagher's stance, like, how's he able to sing and reach those notes? And even he's saying, I can't do it for that long because my voice, especially nowadays, starts to go, right?
Okay.
And yeah, but in terms of their ego, they carried it through of like, well, I'm the bollocks. In the Pistols' case, exactly it, because that's what half they named their album like. And I have the music to back that up. And whether they were around for long or not, you know, in terms of longevity, they made, I guess, that little bit of the sacrifice. But, you know, but with the egos nowadays, you say it's like, who's making the most money? Who's... And it's funny, it's like they... Like, I briefly heard Taylor Swift's story the other day of, like, she made her own record label so she could re-record her own stuff so that she gets the money back from... earns back the money that she lost from her record label not giving her money, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
it's like, I think her old discography is now back up, you know, the charts and sales and shit like that. So you're like, yeah, look, fair enough. It's resourceful, but you're like, again, it's like,
I think it was just this past weekend I was listening to Rick D's Top 40, and I think he was talking about some of this with Taylor bringing back some of her, you know, redoing some of her stuff off of that album that made it so big. Yeah, so this is familiar. I'm not one to follow celebrity gossip and those kinds of things.
Same here. I only saw it as like
unusual that I know, but
well, no, it's like I only quote it because it happened to be on, I think, a news website that you just see what's going on in that space. But you're like, well, okay, so she's made her own record label and this and that. And you're like, right, okay. Again, it just seems to be like, well, I don't know. Like, as I said, the beauty of this show, for example, is about, like, you can have whatever opinion you have about music in that regard, and you know, look, at the end of the day, good luck to them. You know, that's what the audience are looking for. Then, what can you?
And this is the thing about having a marketable product, isn't it?
Yes.
What does your audience want? Give them that. Because if you do, they will buy it. And so if this is what the current modern audience wants, then good on them for being able to suss that out and create a product that is consumable for their current audience. Good for them. Good for them. I'm not going to listen to it. That's the, what do I matter? I'm some 54-year-old woman who...
Well, you know, perfectly said, because like, again, I was seeing an interview with, I think it might have been Noel recently, Noel Gallagher that is, and he was saying that, what artist was getting successful? It might have been Ed Sheeran or somebody. Somebody's asking us, like, you know, this and that and the other. It's like, no, Madonna, that's it, Madonna. And he's like, yeah, I know she's on tour and this
Time
kind
to
of thing.
Put down the microphone, Madonna.
Yeah, well, yeah, the host asked him, saying like, have you been to like gigs recently? He's like, no, like it's not really my thing. But then it's not really aimed at me, you know. It's not really for a 50-something-year-old grumpy man. And it's like, yeah, exactly, you know, to each their own, exactly.
Right?
Can't say better than that.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Danielle, look, it's already been an hour up.
I'm so sorry.
For what?
Blah, blah, blah. For blah 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 blah.
No, not at all. You must be joking. I mean, this is what happens on this show. Like, you have such a fun time, and the conversation keep going and going. But I'd say always leave them wanting more and that kind of thing. So before we go, do you just want to give people an idea of where they can find you and reach out to you for what you do, etc.?
Sure, absolutely. So to find me, to have like a direct connection with me, best, let's say the only place to find me is on Facebook, and I don't use any monikers or anything like that. It's literally just Danielle Wilson, and you'll see this image. Oh, you won't see this image. You'll see some crazy, 10-year-old girl with glasses and exploded hair and smoke all around it. That's me, because I am the crazy experimenter, inner child gone wild person. That is definitely me. So you can find me on Facebook to have a direct connection to me and have a conversation. I really value genuine connection, real conversation. And if you prefer to do things a little bit more discreetly and just check things out, my website is thegrowthalchemist.ca. Nice and easy. Thegrowthalchemist.ca. So that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danielle, for being on the show. And we'll catch you all on the next one.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. Please do like the video or podcast, comment with your thoughts below, subscribe to the channel, and sign up to be a guest on the show. Feel supersonic.